Alright, so the first Marvel movie of 2023 released in theaters a couple weeks back. I was planning on going to go see it, but then something came up and I couldn't go see it, so I was just going to wait for it to come out on Disney Plus because March is a big month. We got Creed 3, Scream 6, a bunch of movies that I want to go see in the theaters, so I was just going to wait for it to go on Disney Plus. But yesterday, I was invited by a friend to go watch this movie. Did I think of it? I'll tell you in this video, but before I do that, please make sure to go down below and subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell, and comment down below, what did you guys think of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania? This is only the second rotten movie in Rotten Tomatoes, or for an MCU movie, but I like the first one. I really enjoy the Eternals, so this could have been good for me. With that said, I'm going to tell you a bit of my backstory in the MCU. So the MCU has been my favorite franchise for a really long time. When I was a child, pretend other movies didn't even exist. I would just strictly watch MCU, rewatch the movies over and over again until I don't know when. And then all of a sudden, I got into Sean Chandler and I was like, you know what? Other movies exist. I'm going to start this YouTube channel. And so I got into other movies and I made other passions like horror movies, action movies, other directors. And so I got out of just the big superhero genre, even though it's still got a special place for me. It's still my favorite genre of movie. With that said, what did I think of this one? And just coming out of this, I told you that story about how special the MCU is to me because I've grown up watching it. I've watched all of the movies. I've loved most of the movies. Leaving the MCU, leaving this one, I left and I was like, I'm suffering from superhero fatigue. And it really sucks to say that because every MCU movie that has come out in the past year, I have been excited for. Multiverse of Madness, Love and Thunder, Wakanda Forever, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I was super excited for all of those. And almost all of those, I loved Multiverse of Madness. But all of those, I left severely disappointed. And I'm guessing it's because they put out way too much content in the past 2 years to where I'm sitting down and I'm like, this is kind of just the same thing over and over again. And that was my huge problem with the movie, was that instead of going something new, we have the classic Ant-Man stuff, and there will be spoilers in this video, just so you know. It's been out for a couple weeks. If you wanted to see it, you probably would have already seen it. But there's your warning. So they go the classic Ant-Man route by sending him on a heist, and that's when the movie was at its best. I sat down, I was like, this is really fun. This is really good. There's really good parts here. And then we keep going on, and going on, and going on, to where I'm just sitting back, I'm like, okay, now we know what's going to happen. He's going to fight Kang in a big battle, and he's going to win. And I sat back, and I was like, do I really want to watch that battle? I didn't. And so I was just taken out of the movie for the whole battle, because it happens every MCU movie. You can predict every MCU movie. Character gets in trouble, finds a bad guy, is attacked by the bad guy, has to rally up to beat the bad guy. And even though this one had some uniqueness when we got to the heist stuff, it just ended up being another MCU movie. And I left the theater like, okay, that was the worst Ant-Man movie. That was the worst movie of Phase 5. That was the worst movie since Wakanda Forever. Take that as you will. Those were the last movies. But I just could not love this movie, even though I was desperately wanting to. I desperately was excited for this movie, and I left it just like, it's another MCU movie. Let's get into some positives here. Obviously, the cast. Paul Rudd, charming as always. He doesn't really get much time to shine here. He's got such a big cast around him that we constantly were switching back from either him or Cassie to Hank, his daughter, or Janet. We were just switching back and forth so often for the first hour of the movie, and then you sit back and you're like, every time Paul Rudd's, he's just with Catherine Newton, and he has some memorable lines, but it's taken more seriously other than the first 2 films where he just made a lot of jokes, and I didn't really find a lot of things funny. I did laugh often, especially when Paul Rudd was talking, but that's about it for Paul Rudd. I still think he's very charming, but the script didn't really give him much to do. Catherine Newton, I'm a bit mixed on her. For one, I really like Catherine Newton. I didn't like her very much in this role. It felt a little cringy to where they were just standing around, and the movie plays it like she's way better than Ant-Man, to where I'm just sitting back like, okay, alright lady, chill out. And I was just like, huh? Why would they do that? Your daughter has been away for 5 years, and now you're just playing it off like, oh, Dad, I'm way better than you the 5 years you're gone. I mean, her father ended the apocalypse, and the movie's just playing it off. Oh, she's way better than him, and I just didn't like that. It wasn't necessarily Catherine Newton I didn't like, it was a script I didn't like. Everyone else did fine. I really liked Michael Douglas in this movie. A lot of people said he was sidelined, which is kind of true, but I still found a lot of his lines funny, and I laughed more at him than anyone else. But then we gotta throw in here, of course, Jonathan Majors as Kang. So for the first hour, I'd say, of this movie, I was more like, what's going on here? I don't really know what's happening. Well, I did know what's happening, but it's kind of mixed for me. And then Kang shows up. And for the first act of the movie, we're going between all these places. Janet's having his own story. Ant-Man's having his own story. And neither of the stories are particularly interesting, especially Ant-Man's. I didn't really love Ant-Man's story all that well, where he's just with his daughter trying to fight for the rebellion or whatever. The moment they get to Kang, the moment we get Kang the Conqueror on screen, he brings in the plot of the movie that wasn't just exposition and backstory and everyone separated. It's a great plot about he needs this item, so he gets Ant-Man to steal it for him. And I thought that was a spectacular plot line to take Ant-Man on, because he's known for his heists. That's what made his first two movies, was his heist. And in this movie, he's just like, oh, I'm gonna go on another heist, okay. And that really worked. That was really when I was invested, because the heist scene really worked with all the ants working, or with all the Ant-Mans working with each other like ants. That was really good. That was really engaging. That was the most I laughed in this movie, was that scene. And then we go on, and Kang is just absolutely brutal. You feel his presence, and the movie really is carried on those big broad shoulders by Jonathan Majors. Jonathan Majors is becoming one of my favorite actors, because Kang in this movie is so good. And we'll talk more about Kang as a character in a few minutes, but for now, let's put a pause on that. Like I said, the movie's really good when it's on its heist. It's got the classic Ant-Man vibes there, but when we keep going on, it just gets progressively worse. The visuals, you gotta say the visuals are quite cool. Everyone says the CGI was terrible and looked like Spy Kids 3D. I walked out of this and I was like, it's not terrible. MODOK looks like that because that's what he looks like in the comics. They couldn't have done a better design for him. And it was really cool when he was in his little mask there. That's what I thought really worked. So the CGI wasn't all that bad. But for now, I'm just trying to find positives to say. It was fun in a couple scenes. I'm not going to give it a really low negative score, because I still appreciate what Marvel could do. It's not like a piece of crap. It's not boring. I sat there and I was invested through most of the movie, but I just kind of lost interest, like we were talking about with the MCU fatigue. I was just like, come on, man, I don't want another CGI battle. In the first Ant-Man, we had the battle on the train. That was unique. I have looked forward to that every time I rewatch the movie. In the second Ant-Man, we have, well, that movie's so forgettable, but we have the, I forgot what the final battle was. I haven't rewatched that movie in a while, but we have something special there. In this movie, we have a big CGI battle where Ant-Man goes big and smashes buildings and then fights Kang. And I couldn't even appreciate the fight with Kang, because that movie I was just so taken out of it, because I did not want another CGI battle. I got another CGI battle, and I walked away. I was like, okay, alright. That's what this movie was. And a couple other negatives here. I said MODOK didn't look terrible. I definitely don't think he needed to be in this movie. He was okay when he was with Kang and when he was evil, when he was trying to stop people. He was kind of cool at first, but not really like the character. It was also kind of taking screen time away from Kang. But I sat down and I was like, okay, alright, MODOK's cool. And then at the end of the movie, Cassie goes, right after she defeats him, goes, you just need to stop being a dick. And he goes, I can do that? No explanation. Just a 16-year-old girl who is better than everyone tells him to quit being a dick. He turns around, and he is very crucial in defeating Kang in this movie. What? Why would he just turn all of a sudden? It makes no sense. It was not explored carefully, and I just was like, okay, MODOK wasn't really necessary in this movie. And another thing with Kang, I liked him as a character. I liked him as an actor. He had the screen presence, but this was a wasted character. You sit back and you're like, okay, this Kang was exiled because all the other Kangs were scared of him. All the other Kangs, he was destroying their timeline, destroying them, so they were scared of him. This is one of the most powerful Kangs, and you're defeated by a flying head and a bunch of ants and some little stingrays. That's it? That defeats the mighty Kang the Conqueror? How is one Kang or a bunch of Kangs gonna defeat the 50-something people that's going to be in Kang Dynasty? If 2 people could defeat Kang, how? It's just like, what? What are they doing here? This movie was not written well. It was directed fine, but I'm just like, this movie should have been better than everything I watched this year. An MCU movie that introduces us to Kang should have been better than a a Amazon Prime action movie and a Kevin Williamson written slasher. Of course, it probably wouldn't have been better than the slasher. It was a pretty good slasher, but it should have been way better than a Netflix rom-com, which I had troubles putting it above that on my ranking, and it might change. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania just severely disappointed me. They made so many ideas here that just did not work, and I'm suffering from MCU fatigue real bad. You need to do something better in Guardians of the Galaxy. I have a feeling I'll love that movie. I love No Way Home because of the emotions. I need something to love that movie. But for now, it'll change after rewatch. Maybe, I hope it will change after rewatch. Not even gonna lie to you, I was a bit tired, but I didn't feel tired till the end of the movie. I sat back and I was like, okay, I'm starting to get exhausted. So it probably was that final battle, but I'm definitely going to sit down and rewatch the movie again, and maybe it'll change. I hope it'll change, but for now, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, gonna get a C from me. Originally, my initial reaction, I gave it a B-. Then I wrote in my notes, I'm gonna give it a C+. Then I wrote C, because it's just so frustrating to me that an MCU movie could become this. It was very frustrating to watch. Be very frustrating when I watch it again, because this had so much potential, but it didn't work. Stay tuned for my Creed 3 reviews and my Scream 6 review coming out soon. After those, I plan on ranking the Rocky franchise, ranking the Scream franchise. For Ant-Man, I'm going to rank the Ant-Man movies. I planned on ranking the franchise as a whole, but then I was like, no, because here I can rank the Ant-Man movies. Then in Guardians of the Galaxy, I can rank the James Gunn movies and rank the MCU trilogy. Say my MCU ranking for the end of the year. But yeah, that's just my review of this. Tell me down below, what did you guys think of it? And with that said, subscribe to the Nerd Army. Peace out.